necessarily want to calm down right now. Uh-oh. Not after that turn up, So ladies, if you don't mind, we're going to talk to you, we're going to play with you. I'm going to be on this and you're going to be on that. If I'm going to get turned up on here, I need...
You're at R&R tonight. Monday Night Mindset. We're going to let some folks jump on. In the meantime, enjoy the music.
Yo, before we even do that, man, I need...
I love my man with all honesty, but I know he's cheating on me.
R&R is in the house. Reclaim, release, and rediscover. We got something special for you tonight in episode 2. You are with Topazz, with R&R. We got some special guests that will be joining us. I almost said in the building. If it wasn't for social distancing, they would be in the building. But in the meantime, they are in their own buildings. You are with R&R. Reclaim, release, and reset with Topazz. How's your Monday? Feeling like a little bit of groove? Tonight's episode is Protect Black Women. Say no to the bro code. All right, that was DJ Spade. Hope you enjoyed that beat. All right, happy Monday. The Monday Mindset, R&R with Topazz. We appreciate you for being with us. You are with CTN Media. That's right, CTN Media. And we want you to know a little bit about what we are doing at CTN. So let's get with it. That's right. Subscribe at the YouTube channel for CTN, where you are changing the narrative. We're changing the narrative at CTN with you on board. It's something for the culture. Like, subscribe, share, and of course, follow, so you can get those notifications every time CTN is doing something. And of course, we want you to like and share R&R because we want you to join us for every episode. This is episode 2, so this is the second one. And we are excited to be with you. This is brought to you by the Black Business Initiative. Support independent Black media. Follow CTN on Instagram. That's right. Follow CTN on Instagram. You want to support Black media every opportunity you get, changing the narrative with CTN Media. All right. I'm excited about the agenda this evening. We are continuing the conversation that is supporting the October Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Intimate Partner Violence Awareness. We are bringing more information, more education, because we want you to know how to support community, how to support those who are vulnerable, how to support those who need to know that they're loved, that they need to know that there's somebody out there who cares, because a lot of victims out there who are going through feel alone, feel like that there is no one that cares. And so this evening, I wanted to dedicate the show to an opportunity for some men to come on board and share their thoughts, share their experiences. And we know that for the most part, the victims of intimate partner violence are definitely women. We know that there are men that have experience victimization as well, but we are focusing on Black women in particular. And because there are the partners are generally men, of course, same-sex relationships experience intimate partner violence as well. But because the predominant abusers are of the male gender, I wanted to give Black men an opportunity to come on board with us and talk about their experiences of when maybe they themselves have contributed to toxicity in a relationship, have maybe engaged in harmful behavior themselves, how they have come through it, what work they did, what recommendations they have, and why they feel that it's important to support Black women. So that is going to be what our conversation is about this evening. Last week for our first episode, if you want to go back and watch that, that was dedicated specifically to victim awareness. I had a special guest on who shared her experience in a marriage where she was victimized, and then I shared a little bit about my own journey. So we are just kind of moving through the continuum as we really explore this concept of intimate partner violence and bringing awareness, bringing education, and making resources known to those out there who need help. That's right. If you look on the screen, you'll see the number to the domestic violence hotline, which is available 24/7 nationwide. So wherever you happen to be watching this evening, you can call that 800 number at 1-800-799-7233. Again, that's 1-800-799-7233. All right. Well, we are going to be welcoming some of our guests on board. We have 4 gentlemen who have agreed to be a part of this courageous conversation. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and welcome them to this conversation. And the first one on board, we've got Lacy McDonald in the house. Many of you know him through his work in the community with our youth and his nonprofit. We also have a friend, Gregg Fairweather, who is with us as well. Welcome aboard, Lacy and Gregg. And we are expecting a couple of more guests. I guess we're waiting for them to get on board. I did kind of add them a little bit early because I'm looking at the wrong timer here. But what I will do is give you gentlemen an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself and why you decided to accept this invitation to join me on this conversation about saying no to the bro code and protecting Black women. So Lacy, why did you decide to accept this invitation to be a part of the show this evening? But first, share a little bit about yourself and what it is you do in community.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. We hear you.
All right. Well, I'm Lacy McDonald. I've been working in the community for, I guess, the past 6 to 7 years now, as far as social emotional development of our youth. Is who I particularly concentrate on. I've been working in the Montbello area and the Fed area, Colfax area. This is around Sloan's Lake. I work with my wife over at Lake Middle School. I volunteer there a lot. And for this particular episode, I definitely wanted to contribute my, I guess, my 2 cents to it, to trying to change that narrative, right? And hopefully we can, explore some of the difficulties I had as a young man and trying to find who I was, because I hurt some folks along the way, man. And I think without a roadmap, because I did not have, good mentoring or male role models to kind of guide me in that direction. It was boys raising boys pretty much. And what I had was, videos, rap videos, Hollywood, to explore what it meant to be a Black man and building relationships with Black women.
Thank you, Lacy. Appreciate that. So we're going to be hearing more about that experience. And of course, as always, just want to say thank you for what you do for our youth. Gregg, share a little bit about yourself and why you decided to accept the invitation this evening. Sounds like you're muted. We can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Maybe the volume on your computer, maybe? Check your mic. Well, we will let you work on that. Looks like, yeah, looks like you're muted from what I can tell. Your icon has a cross through it. Okay, now we can hear you.
All right, I had to switch my microphones.
Okay.
So sorry about that, but
No worries.
yeah. So thank you for having me. I know you and I have known each other for years and been friends and interacted. And part of my background is a corporate recruiter, so I actually help folks find jobs and place them in different areas. But besides that, I've been a board member for an organization called Denver Works. It's a group that helps men and women with barriers to employment find employment, interview sessions, and help facilitate that process. So Denver Works typically works with folks who have been incarcerated and reintegrating them back into the community and that type of thing. But as far as the topic this evening, just like Lacy, I've had experiences in my past that I'm not proud of, that I've hurt a lot of people along the way, including my spouse, who, we've been married now almost 31 years. So because of addiction and some other issues that I had early in my life, that affected the relationship, and definitely I felt compelled to get on this evening and talk about how to improve our relationships with Black women.
Thank you. Thank you. And you have an incredible wife, Jennifer. And congratulations on those years of marriage. And we know that marriage is not an easy that's not an easy task. And so we have to be intentional when we're talking about really making marriage work. And so when you're coming into a marriage, or if any point in time that marriage ends up getting contaminated with any form of harmful behavior, harmful acts, harmful tendencies, it makes it that much more difficult. So I really want to just acknowledge and just take a moment to celebrate you all for coming through that hard time and sticking it out. And you've been married for how long again?
It was 30 years in March, so this coming March will be 31.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Good stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We've grown up together.
Nice. And you still like each other. That's the good.
We do, and COVID has actually proved that to be even more true.
Nice, nice. All right, Shug, welcome aboard. Mr. Shan, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. We are just kind of taking a minute to do introductions. And so if you want to just share a little bit about yourself and why you decided to accept the invitation this evening to be on this panel.
My name is Sorrel Shedd. I'm from Denver, Colorado, Northeast Denver. The reason why I decided to take on the task because Ms. Topazz has been influencing my life for the past going on 2 years now. And not only that, I'm raising a young Black woman and mother and all my grandparents and stuff like that, girl cousins.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So it sounds like a heart matter for you too, Shug, when you're raising a daughter and you've got so many women in your family that are close and dear to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for accepting the invitation. And so I'm assuming Theo is not in the room yet. So we are going to just jump into our questions here. So, sound like somebody was going to say something?
No.
All right. So my first question to you, gentlemen, is what is it that you recognize within yourself, whether it's still something you're working through and processing through, whether it's something that you feel you have completely recovered from? What is it about your own lifestyles, your own practices that you feel has been harmful? And you've alluded to it a little bit. So if you can offer just a little more detail, what do you feel that you have you've contributed to the harming of Black women, and in what capacity? Was it physical? Was it emotional? And then the next part of that question is, what specific work have you done to work through that?
Some seriously deep question, Ms. Topazz. But if you guys don't mind, I guess I'll jump in head first. I guess for me, as I said, I didn't really have good male role models in my life. Or should I say I had male role models, but it wasn't like a father to kind of guide me through the day-to-days when it came to building relationships, especially with women and young women in particular. Because when I started to date young Black girls at the time, I'm looking at Boys in the Hood, and the relationships that were built then. I'm listening to Tupac and how, it was about how many women you can have, how many relationships you can have that gave you that self-worth of being a man. And I feel that definitely had me hurting women, especially Black women, Black girls at the time, for sure. The promiscuity of, just not having that type of guidance. And then on top of that, just with dealing with the daily, I guess, traumas, from home and just from the hood, that's one of the many ways of trying to show my manhood. And I definitely hurt a lot of girls, a lot of Black women, for sure.
If there, in the event that there are some of those women who may be watching right now, who may be tuning in, what would you want to say to them?
Well, I definitely would like to apologize for my actions. I think, man, it's terrible that, that had happened, but it wasn't done in malice, for sure. I just didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I had no guidance whatsoever, and granted, and that doesn't make it all right, but I'm sorry that happened to you. And I try to live in a better way by, raising young women, young Black women in the hood, wherever they may be, to sculpt them to be great women and to look for the good qualities, that things that I was missing, as a young man, to help them, so we're not making those same mistakes.
And I notice you keep saying the hood, but we know that domestic violence, intimate partner violence in particular, really knows no barriers when it comes to socioeconomic class. That intimate violence happens at every level, at every class level. So I really want to put that out there for our audience, because I think that there is this this misnomer, this myth that only happens in the hood, when in reality, there are women in corporate America, celebrities. We know the whole story with Rihanna and Chris Brown. It happens at every level. So just because you may be in a different class does not mean that you are, you are not vulnerable to those experiences. So I just want to put that out there. And Mr. Wilson has joined us. So Theo, I want to give you an opportunity before we continue with that question to just kind of say a little bit about yourself and why you decided to accept the invitation to be a part of this panel this evening.
How you doing? Theo E.J. Wilson. Just a brother who's striving to do better. You know what I mean? I am the executive director of Shop Talk Live, but that doesn't exclude me from the human experience. It's so interesting because when we step into leadership roles and we step in as the flawed human beings that we are, trying to find a way to improve our communities from where we are. And it's just, it's not a linear path. It's a winding road. And I personally, fortunately, have never been a perpetrator of interpartner violence, or fortunately never had that modeled in the home. But I have a compassion for the vulnerability of the people who have seen that go down, because it's harder to step outside of a pattern that you've actually seen and witnessed. But that doesn't mean that I never stepped a file of women before. Some guys after heartbreak go through a player phase, if you will, and it can be seen as kind of an abuse. You know what I'm saying? So mine lasted for entirely too long. And, it was just one of those things that's, you begin to see yourself. And my biggest regret in all of this is, having to hurt a Black woman to come to my enlightenment. You know what I mean? Like that. It's too high of a price, you know what I mean? So that's, but things move on, and I'm here now to talk about whatever aspect I can rightfully talk about,
Thank you for that. And I'm glad that you added that component on the end, because we know that intimate partner violence comes in various forms. People often think that it's limited to the physical aspect, when in reality, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse can be, in some instances, far more damaging and take a lot longer to recover from the mental and emotional abuse. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. So Gregg, I'm gonna go to you and give you an opportunity to respond to that question.
Absolutely. So the issues that I had stem from addiction from adolescence, and that carried over into the beginning stages of my marriage, where I think initially my wife thought maybe that I would change or things would get better, and it really hit a low point where the addiction was running my life, which then impacted our family and my wife financially, but more so the emotional impact and abuse that addiction caused on our relationship. And that's what I think hurt the most, is my wife, being a proud Black woman, seeing that impact her in that way. And it has taken years for me to gain that trust back that I broke early on in our marriage. And that's part of what we have done. And I say we because, she forgave me, and we've worked through the stages of addiction together. But it's still not done. It's a work in progress. So that's probably what I would say is the worst impact, is seeing that emotional toll on her, and how it's taken so long to get back to a place where we're really comfortable with each other.
Thank you for that. And you bring up a really good point, Gregg, when you talk about it's ongoing work. marriage in and of itself is something that is an experience that requires continuous contribution for healing, for growth, nurturing marriages. I do a couples group that I call marriage enrichment, because marriages need to be enriched along the way. And as I said earlier, when you have all of these other entities that contribute to the difficulty, contribute to the challenges that already exist, when there are layers on top of that, that compromise one's trust, that compromise one's faith in their partner, it makes it that much more difficult to, to stay the course, So I really want to just celebrate your, your partners, for those of you who were with your partners or with your wives at the time that you were still engaging in harmful practices that were hurtful to the relationship. So I definitely want to honor your wives for standing with you in that. Should
Yes, ma'am.
what would you say that you've realized that you've done over the years that has contributed to harming Black women, whether it was a girlfriend, an intimate partner, maybe even your mother? Because I want to talk about that too. The harm that's done to other family members, because domestic violence covers the gamut, and then there's the intimate partner component that is specific to the person that you are intimately engaged with at the time.
Most definitely. So, growing up, when I grew up with my mother, that was, predominantly raising me and my brother. She had a few guys, well, one in particular that used to, they used to have domestic violence problems. And growing up, I seen that, and that caused anger for me to grow up and see things like that. My father, dating different women, and me growing up thinking that that's what it was, and that was acceptable, and hurting women, really good women. And I just feel as if, what you grow up to see, sometimes that can affect you more ways than none. So just leading by example for my son, not trying to break that cycle with him right now. And just I done been in both situations, with a violent relationship with one of my girlfriends when I was younger, and getting a domestic violence charge, and later on getting it dropped for no reason at a particular time. So domestic violence is real, and it's just not with a woman and man. It could be with, um, guys with guys or girls with girls. That's what I seen growing up with some of my cousins that dated other women, and they was women. And I seen them more than what my mom was going through. I seen them getting into it more than anybody. You know what I mean? It's just not a husband and wife thing. It's boyfriend on boyfriend thing. It's girlfriend on girlfriend thing. So I just think it's just breaking the cycle, Ms. Topazz.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone else want to share anything else as it relates to that particular question? And anyone that that you've hurt, I want to extend that opportunity again. If there any of you want to, in the event that they're watching, and in the event that someone that they know is watching that may carry the message back to them, is there anything that that any of you want to say to that individual?
Well, I do. If I ever hurted you, I apologize tremendously, and I just want you guys to forgive me if I ever hurted you, if we ever dated and I ever did something I was uncalled for. I'm just here now as a different man than I was last year, even a week ago, even yesterday. Apologize for that.
Yeah. Anyone else?
You alluded on, the interpersonal relationship you have, with your mother. And I think that does play an important part. I saw my mom in domestic incidences, with one of her boyfriends that she had, and it definitely did shape the way that I would have my relationships with women, and Black women in particular. I never wanted to be physical with them or anything of that nature, because as a child, that's what I got to witness. I witnessed my father break the house up, and then him and my mom freaking, pushing each other and whatnot, and just turning a Christmas Eve into a hellish endeavor. And it's something that, definitely marred me. And it's like, I was always searching for, I guess, a compass to kind of go off of when having relationships with others, even ones that I really loved, and I just couldn't function because I was lacking so much, and I did not have a good role model to kind of use to lean on, let alone, have deep discussions about like building a relationship with a woman. So, I mean, I think that was a major handicap for me.
And definitely, if you grow up in a home where domestic violence is practiced, and again, domestic violence just being violence in the home in general, but in particular to your between your caretakers, between the ones who are raising you, rearing you, influencing you, and modeling for you what love is, what marriage is supposed to look like, what a partnership is supposed to look like. And if those people who are modeling that for you are engaged in violence between each other, whether that's the way that they speak to each other, the way that they treat each other physically, it certainly begins to influence the mindset of the children who are growing up in it, who eventually normalize it if there's no intervention to teach them otherwise, that this is not okay. So whether we're talking about molestation, sexual abuse, or we're talking about physical violence, verbal abuse, demeaning kinds of behavior, it's significant. We have to pay attention to how our children and how the children who we influence are impacted by our behaviors. It makes a difference. And as I was sharing a little bit of my story last week, one of the variables that certainly influenced my decision to end my situation was when I realized how that was potentially influencing my son. I did not want my son to grow up thinking that this is how you treat a woman, or that this is love in any way, or that this is what marriage is supposed to be. But I also had nieces that I was concerned about, and I didn't want my nieces to think that. Not that they were ever directly exposed to it, but we'd be surprised at what children pick up on in terms of nonverbals and how we respond to each other when we're not really modeling tenderness, intimacy in front of them, and showing them that it's okay to compliment each other, to be nice to each other, to be loving to one another. If we're not exemplifying that, if we're not demonstrating that in front of the young people who are watching, it makes a difference. And so when we're talking about changing the narrative, all of those things are things that we have to pay attention to. So speaking of changing the narrative, this is CTN Media. CTN Media can be seen on YouTube. It's a place where we are changing the narrative. CTN Media is Black media. You want to support Black media. We are expanding. We are here for the culture. We are here for you so that we have information that is relevant to our community growing, to our community progressing and advancing. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and share and follow CTN Media. And this is Topazz with R&R, where this focus of this platform every Monday Mindset is about addressing, reclaiming, releasing, and rediscovering. So in this topic, we are releasing some things and rediscovering. And so hopefully, particularly if there are any victims that are watching, my hope is that you are able to release some things. Put your comments in the chat. If you have questions for these gentlemen, please put those questions in the chat. If you have comments and messages for them, put that in the chat. You are invited to be a part of this conversation. So with that being said, I want to shift a little bit. I want to okay, let me address this question. It looks like it's from C. I'm not sure if there's a name that goes with C, but when we talk about harm or causing harm, I think it's important that the word or term be defined and agreed on, because harm or causing harm to someone is very subjective and personal to that person. Thank you for that. And you're absolutely correct. And for the context of this particular show, when I'm referring to harm, I'm talking about anything that depersonalizes, that demeans, that abuses an individual in any way, leaves someone with any level of trauma, experiencing trauma, questioning their identity, questioning their worth, something that impacts their ability to continue to function in a healthy way and influences them in just as I was just sharing about how we model particular behavior, if it's influencing them to engage in behavior that then turns around and repeats the cycle of harming someone else. So again, I'm talking about any behavior, any interactions with someone who you're in an intimate relationship with or a family member, and you cause them to question their worth, that leaves them feeling demeaned, minimized, dehumanized, physically hurt, mentally or emotionally hurt. That's what we're referring to when we're talking about harm in this context. So thank you for your statement and request for clarity on that. So moving forward, I want to shift gears just a little bit. Do any of you want to respond before I shift gears? Have you had any thoughts that you want to elaborate on before I shift?
I had one thing, Topazz. I just
Okay.
wanted to your earlier point. I have a Black son who we were raising to be a man. He's now 27, but the abuse that he experienced was not physical, but it definitely was emotional, in the fact that he would notice that his mother and I were not speaking, or there was tension.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any fighting, there wasn't any throwing things or anything like that, but it was just tension, and it wasn't a pleasant place to be. So, now him being able to see his parents in a healthy relationship, taking trips with us, just the three of us, and having now an adult child that you can have conversations about addiction and issues. It's come full circle. So
thank you. And thank you for using the term tension, because that's exactly what it is. Children can pick up on tension. They can pick up on an awkwardness between their parents, between their family members, and they get curious, what's going on? Is everything okay? And it can cause a lot of anxiety in children if they start to anticipate or they start to assess that there are problems between their parents.
And definitely internalizing that and thinking that it's something that they've done.
Absolutely. That happens often, where children will internalize. Especially when they're not giving clear answers. They're not given answers that make sense to them at their level of development, then it makes it that much more likely that they will internalize that process. And then because the tendency then is, unless we're very intentional in our responses to the children, is sometimes to take that out on the children, to be less available, emotionally available for the children. And when there's a change in the dynamic of that relationship between the parent and the child, then that is also going to elevate some anxiety with them. So my next question is, what does the bro code mean to you? What does that mean? And how does it influence how you respond or how you don't respond to situations or circumstances where you recognize that that relationship is high risk or dangerous? And when I say high risk, maybe you're seeing red flags that suggest that that woman in that relationship is vulnerable to some likely form of abuse. So
Well,
what does that bro code mean to you?
well, I'm pretty sure majority of us online right now got somebody that's going through a domestic violent relationship right now, whether if it's family, friends, whatever the case may be. Me personally, because of the situations I done been in and the stuff I done seen, if one of my cousins is going through a domestic violent type of situation, I'm going to tell them to seek help the best as they can, because sometimes it just keeps on prolonging. It just keeps going until somebody gets hurt. Um, two, but two or three of the young ladies I grew up with, their boyfriends killed them. You know what I mean? And it is probably signs before that that people seen, and they probably tried to help the individuals out, like, hey, go get some help. And it was so far gone, and it caused death within the relationships. And that's where it starts. It starts at home, as far as in, what's going on behind closed doors that we ain't seeing visually, but on the outside looking in, we're like, something's wrong. You got a black eye, or whatever the situation may be, or they don't want their significant other to go to jail, or whatever the situation may be. Instead of going to get help, and then by the time they try to go get help, it's already too far gone.
Yeah, I want to second on that. So, ever since 2017, Shop Talk Live has taken the initiative to actually examine the bro code and what we got at stake as Black men, specifically in talking about male privilege. And because of the position I'm in the community, I have been pretty amplified in walking it out, taking my lumps, falling down on my face, and getting up. You know what I mean? And it's just one of the stickiest situations, because what they say, what they mean is examine the bro code. You know what I'm saying? That bro code is, homies over girls, you know what I'm saying? And that allows for this blind spot of abuse to take place. And we don't really challenge the homies like that. You know what I'm saying? So then Black women got at me like, yo, why don't y'all say nothing? And one of the things I tried to explain to sister was that there really be like an imminent threat of violence when you confront the homie about this. Like, it'd be like a for real, like, if you open this door, you actually might end up going toe to toe with somebody. Like, you actually might have to like throw blows or worse, right? Which means that in order to broach this topic, you take a whole level of preparation. But then I was willing to do it. You know what I'm saying? Found myself intervening in a couple of situations. And I got to be honest with y'all, man. I have been scarred over that a little bit. And I'm not all the way quite healed from it, because let me tell you what went down. You can't intervene no more than the person who's the victim is willing to intervene. You can't do no more than they're willing to do. Even if you went hood justice, even if you went full street justice and cornered homie outside the club and whooped him up, full beat down, he in the hospital, right? If she's not willing to let him go, or if she's not willing to move beyond that point, she will run to his side. And that, if they're trauma bonded, will be the new trauma to increase and strengthen their bond. You see what I'm saying? And so, however, I will say this. Me trying to intervene in certain situations, me trying to hold the homie accountable in certain situations, at least you can step through and check that box on the level of escalation. You see what I'm saying? Not check the box in terms of it being a shallow token effort, because that's what check the box can mean. but it's part of the protocol that should be underwent in order to try to get it done. But just know that I have found myself more than one time in a position where, you know, I'm dealing with a possible violent encounter, and the fact that the person who was the victim like within the next few days made up that person. So I'm sitting up here looking like an idiot. You know what I'm saying? It's a sticky situation, bro. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's what the bro code do. Even when you try to go against it for the right thing.
most definitely.
Yeah, you know, the bro code is a part of the culture, unfortunately, and I feel like it has evolved because you had a bunch of boys raising boys, you know, and a man would have the courage to intervene and, you know, set the example for us to follow, right? So if I'm having a conversation and I already have a hint that there may be something wrong with my friend and his relationship or whatever, yeah, and I'm like, I would go for advice, you know, I'd be like, yo, dad or your uncle or whoever, you know, I got a problem. You know, my homie over here, he's having issues with his lady. What should I do? And then boom, you know, you'll get some some decent advice on how to navigate that situation. But you know, like I said, a lot of us are lacking that. So a lot of the times it does come down to the hood justice, right? Where we square it off, fighting it out in the alley, and then you know she goes running back to him. I don't know what the psychological term of that is when someone who's being abused runs back to their abuser. I don't know exactly what that term is psychologically, but I mean, it's a real thing. I think that we collectively now have to be courageous. And when these times come, we have to, you know, it has to be identified and we have to put a name to it. You know what I mean? And we can't turn a blind eye and we can't be scared. Like courage needs to, it's a part of the game, you know? We have to have the courage to say something. And I know for me, as in my adolescence, I didn't have that courage. I lacked that courage. I didn't have that guidance. But me as a man, yes, I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna say something about it. I will name it. You know what I mean? Because even though I may burn a bridge with you know, the person that the victim, whoever that may be, I mean, I know in my heart I did everything that I could to help that person. You know what I mean? That's my 2 cents.
And a victim who goes back to an abusive relationship, that is what Theo was referring to with the trauma bonding. A trauma bond will keep a victim in an abusive relationship. And there are other clinical terms that can be associated with that cycle, you know, that cycle of abuse and reactivity to victimization. And it really depends on the specifics in different situations or circumstances. But that trauma bond will definitely keep a victim in a cycle of returning to abuse, whether it's with the same partner or a different partner. There's something that eventually begins to happen that affects the psyche and the spirit of an individual, and they're broken, which is why I really put the emphasis on the fact that it's not just physical abuse that we're concerned about, but emotional and mental abuse. I mean, look at Jim Crow. Look at how, you know, what really got us as Black folks to the point to where we were so conditioned to where we were following the standards, if you will, the guidelines, the rules, the laws that were put in position for us to stand there and watch one of our own be tortured and murdered in very violent ways, and the conditioning that happened through those experiences. And yet when there was opportunity for a lot of people to leave those situations, they chose not to. The fear had overtaken them. You know, there is that Stockholm syndrome that begins to take place as well. And you are so terrorized to where you come to a place to where you believe that this is what is supposed to happen. It's normalized, and the victim loses their sense of identity and self-worth to the point to where they believe that this is the best that they can get, and that comes through the gaslighting that the abuser engages in to really compromise that person's mental functioning, their mental capacity as it relates to their self-worth and identity. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Gregg?
Well, I just wanted to mention, to Lacy's point, in my adolescence, early 20s, the bro code was really prevalent as far as hanging out with my boys and, looking the other way when realistically you knew it was wrong. And that carried through my 20s. But it seems like it's stages of life. In my mid 50s now, I can honestly look at someone and say, yeah, man, that ain't cool. I may get, some beef or flack or something from it, but at least I'm pointing it out to where it may be so ingrained in them that they don't even realize it anymore.
Yeah.
And that could potentially stop some sort of abuse or further escalation. But, I think it's tough for young men to get a feel for where they are within their relationships with other males and being able to call that out. And that's a difficult situation. And realistically, only with age have I been able to do that.
I want to say something to that. This is really good, Gregg. Thank you very much for adding that, because one of the things that stops brothers from standing up is because these brothers be the only family you feel like you ever had. You feel me? Sometimes it just be like, man, look, I know why he like that. My dog is just going through it. You know what I'm saying? Look at what his pops did to him. Man, I can't ride on him like that, even though he wildin'. I might say something like, hey, yo, B, chill real quick. You feel me? But it's never like something that like these people are willing to risk that relationship, because sometimes the bro be your bro for real. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all done fought together, y'all done did dirt together, and that's that. So what I'll say, because I have to get off of here, I got my baby and there's more stuff we got to do tonight. But when I thought heavily about this topic of intimate partner violence and all the factors that go into it. And I'll say that self-love is the token of the realm. With that self-love token, you will barter how much suffering you will and will not take. You see what I'm saying? There are those who are abusers who know they can't abuse everybody. It's like a predator. Like if you look at documentaries like Ted Bundy and all these guys, you know what I'm saying? Like they can smell if somebody had that kind of energy with them, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of that boils down to the self-love and also the self-love of the offender, of the abuser. All in all, we're all taking our initiation in love. It's the hardest initiation on the planet. That's why we got so many songs dedicated to it. Like love is the hardest thing on the planet. And the reason is because when you love somebody, they get to all your broken inner child spaces. You know what I'm saying? Like now where you could keep your boss at bay, even your friends at bay to a certain extent, strangers or whatnot, they can't know you past a certain point. By the time you let somebody into your heart, all the buttons, the triggers, the landmines, they're right there. And if these people, they just crip walking and tap dancing and blowing up stuff, you feel me? So your first step to improving anything is self-knowledge and self-awareness. Self-knowledge and self-awareness is key, because with that, you can find where you're broken. You have time to reflect on yourself, and you can actually pick, like if you have a brother who knows he has a temper, knows he can blow up. If you don't want to be that person, you have to know yourself well enough to know this sister right here is blind in just the right way that it will hit this button. I shouldn't date her. You see what I'm saying? And you as a man, like this is part of your responsibility as a man, but we're all taking this painful but necessary initiation in love, yo. And once we're self-aware and self-accountable to evolve on our own, we'll naturally do the work to improve and evolve our relationships, because we're always working on a relationship with ourselves. You feel me? Like, and I'm going to even prioritize that and just go, rub somebody the wrong way, even above the relationship with God to a certain extent. And here's why. Because even with that, you have a scripture and a rule book to go by. But I've seen people who have totally invested in a relationship with God that don't know themselves like that. You feel me? They don't understand their triggers. They don't know nothing like that about what's going on inside of them. And then, like, the scripture won't cover it. The religion won't cover it. Only you can unearth these things. You can use the tools from the religion to do so.
How did you do it, Theo? How did you unearth those things for yourself?
Pain and suffering. Pain and suffering. That's the short end of it. And me having to, when I messed up, the burn was so hot, it was like a scab in my soul. It formed a hard neurological pain response barrier. You see what I'm saying? And I realized that I didn't know when I was doing wrong. I thought maybe it's my conditioning that's doing wrong. I couldn't distinguish my conditioning from my true conscience. And I realized, oh, shoot, I was ignoring my conscience. You feel me? Mm-hmm. So you have to figure out those borders. But my lack of self-knowledge, I knew all of this other stuff. Everybody who knows me knows I'm an encyclopedia. I'm a walking encyclopedia. I know so much stuff. But me not knowing about myself is what put this young lady in danger. You feel me? Mm-hmm. So that's really what it is. And me not loving myself enough to know, oh, dude, if you walk against your conscience, actually you're hurting yourself in the long run. I was standing on a cliff, you know what I'm saying? Like I went up to like Lookout Mountain. There's a cliff right there. You know what I'm saying? And I was at the edge of my life and I was like, yo, this is harder, what you're doing right now, than the work it would have done to know yourself well enough to prevent this. Like this, what you're doing right now, this suffering is like 20 times harder. You see what I'm saying? So figure out the short end, you know what I'm saying? And that ounce of prevention is worth the 10, 20, 30,000 pounds of cure. You know what I mean? But you got to know yourself. And that's where I got to leave it off, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Well, I want to add something real quick, Theo, and I'd like you to hear this. I want to, first of all, I know that hopefully you're okay with me saying this, that you did seek some counseling for support. And I think that people need to know that counseling is okay. It's okay to get help. But what I really wanted you to hear is the part about love. We have to be careful of how we're referencing love and using love, because when we're in an abusive relationship and a dysfunctional relationship, particularly when we don't have the foundation that you refer to with regard to self-awareness, self-respect, and self-love, the likelihood that you really love someone is not. Is poor, because you really don't even know what love is. But we convince ourselves that it's love, but a lot of times it's really we're possessed with this person, you know, and we are wanting to control and own a person, and that's very different than love. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I didn't want to counter what you said without you being present to defend it if you felt like you needed to.
Oh, I think that's all. I don't think it counters it at all. I think it just enhances it, because what you're talking about is literally, you can't give away what you don't have. You feel me?
Exactly.
You just can't. You feel me? So I think that Neil Donald Walsh said every act of darkness is just a distorted act of love. If you look at every horrible, ratchet, terrible, violent, destructive thing that goes on this entire planet, if you look at the perpetrators of the act, if you dig deeper and deeper and deeper, you will find an unmet love need, period. Every act of violence is a distorted act of love. And so one of the pastors that I did go to said, sin is getting a legitimate need illegitimately, a legitimate need met illegitimately.
Illegitimately, absolutely. And I do agree with what you said, by the way. As a Christian myself, a Christ lover, I agree that there has to be balance. You cannot be so spiritual that you're no earthly good. You have to know who you are, who God has created you to be. And a lot of times people cover up dysfunction, people cover up abuse, cover up things that are truly unhealthy with scripture. And that is not what scripture is intended for. It's not to make excuses for inappropriate or abusive, hurtful behavior.
That's what's up. Well, I appreciate you inviting me on, Topazz.
Thanks for being with us.
Can stay the whole time, y'all. Be good. Very necessary discussion.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Absolutely. Anyone else, as we are actually nearing the end here, anyone else want to add to that aspect of the question? of the question that was asked, but I want to put another question out here. How do we shift? And you've kind of alluded to it already, but how do we really begin to shift the narrative as it relates to the bro code? How do you get in position, and what do you want to say to the men who are watching right now who are likely aware of abusive situations? They know that their homie, their boy, is violent and really being abusive to their wife or to their woman. And what would you say to them? What would you want them to hear right now? And maybe there's some young man who is 15 years old that's watching. What do you want them to know as we move to closing our show this evening?
Well, you know, I got a lot of babies that I work with all throughout Denver, and I know they have their little girlfriends and whatnot, and there's a lot of poison in the water out there when it comes to relationships. And I guess my message to them and to my peers is, you know what's wrong. You know, you feel it in your heart, man. Like it's like an instinct, right? If you see fire, you know it'll probably burn you, and you try to stay away from it. Or so I would say the same thing in this situation is, you know, speak up. You know, if you see something wrong, you say something about it. You know, and in all aspects, it could be in a domestic situation, it could be with you at work, it could be with you at school, it could be a best friend. But if you see something wrong and you care about that person, you're gonna speak up
Well,
on
and
it.
Topazz, I just wanted to mention, I'm glad that you brought up counseling. Um, there were a few components. One, definitely professional counseling helped me through areas that I had to talk through that I could never talk to anyone else about. The spirituality and you know, my faith as well. And I think what I would suggest to young men or men that are having this type of issue in their relationship is find someone to talk to. If it's, you know, not someone professional in an organization, your pastor, your clergy, you know, someone older and wiser, just get someone to talk to and at least have the opportunity to hear another way, because you may not get that. And that's what I think would definitely help someone through these.
Thank you. Sure.
Definitely agree with Lacy and Gregg as to getting help, you know, because I done been through some stuff and I didn't seek help. One person to hit up is Miss Topazz, of course. You always can go down to Brother Jeff's Cultural Learning Center and get help. You know, his arms is welcome all the time. You know, when I was in that rough time in my life, even this past the beginning of this year, you know, just going through some different things, you got to get help. Um, it's cool to get help, and sometimes in, you know, the inner city community, people go, oh, something's wrong with them, they sick, and just being judgmental. But it's okay to get help and seek counseling, because it'll only better yourself in the long run before you know, go to jail. Or and the county ain't nothing nice, you know, the penitentiary ain't nice. It's a lot of young brothers that's in there right now on domestic cases and can't bond out on $1,000 bond, which is $150. Your actions can cause way worse than going to go get some help. So that's why I'm telling the young people and even the older people that's going through the same situation, go get help.
And be careful about who you ask for help, because just because someone has a title does not always mean that they're going to give you the best advice. And like Theo said, or actually it was Lacy that said, you know when you're doing wrong. And when you know that you're doing wrong, then you know when someone is telling you wrong. Because sometimes you can go to that adult who will enable that abusive behavior. So go to someone who is going to speak truth to you and hold you accountable. And if you have a tendency to be violent with your words, with your behavior, the chances are that it's going to take time to heal, to recover from that. And so patience is required. Don't give up on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself, but find the right help and get an accountability partner, someone who is going to hold you accountable and not enable you in your abusive practices. Somebody that's going to pat you on the back and let you slide, because otherwise you could end up killing someone. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence is lethal. Shug shared earlier in the show, if you were watching, that he has known 2 people that have been involved in relationships where the woman was killed through domestic violence. We know that domestic violence can potentially lead to death. We know that 35% of domestic violence victims are Black women, above the ratio of other cultures, other ethnicities. It's 35% higher for Black women. And so to any victims, again, that are watching, there is a hotline that's available. Call that 1-800-799-7233 to get help. That is a hotline that is available 24/7 nationwide. Get help. My practice is Rediscovery Through Wellness. You can find me on Facebook. If you are ready for recovery, for ongoing counseling, the Center for Trauma and Resilience is an excellent resource for shelter, for resources to assist with housing if you need an immediate escape. So say no to the bro code. Protect Black women at every cost. It's not just through intimate partner violence that Black women are suffering, but the worldwide news that focused on Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, and so many others speaks to the violence that Black women experience, and with no justice, with no recourse. We know that Malcolm X said that the most disrespected person in America is a Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is a Black woman, and the most neglected person in America is a Black woman. Malcolm X said that in the 60s, and that has proven to be true even today. So let's change the narrative. Let's change that message to any women who are out there watching, particularly if you know that you are vulnerable in your relationship. Take this information that you received tonight, hopefully as a source of encouragement and confirmation that it's time to get out of that violent relationship, reclaim your lives, release that relationship, and rediscover yourself. Get to know yourself. You've been watching R&R, Reclaim, Release, and Rediscover. And this is the CTN Network. We want you to subscribe to Black Media, subscribe, share, like. You can catch CTN on YouTube. That's right. And support independent Black media. Follow us on Instagram at CTM Media, and CTN is powered by the Black Business Initiative. Again, I want to thank my guest, Lacy McDonald, Shug, otherwise known as Mr. Shed, or Willie Beeman. And then there is Gregg Fairweather, and Theo Wilson was with us earlier. I really thank you, gentlemen, for being courageous enough to come on here and to be open and honest regarding your own challenges, your own personal challenges. And thank you for being committed to making the changes that you've made to become healthier Black men in our community so that you can begin to influence change in your own families and for generations to come. We're changing the narrative. We're breaking generational curses. We're breaking the bro code. We're saying no to the bro code. You're standing up to protect Black women. Again, you've been watching R&R. We're on the CTN network every Monday night at 7 p.m. You can catch us live here at Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you for joining. We hope that you have been enlightened and lifted up and have had a heightened awareness as it relates to this topic. Again, thank my guests for being with us this evening. Everybody have an incredible balance to your week.
Excuse me, Ms. Topaz.
Good night.
Oh, did you want to say something?
I want to say something. I just want to give a huge shout out to my goddad, H.So, for leading me down this path to really talking to the youth and just the people in general. He's a big factor in my life. Just, you know, as my leader, I just want to give him a shout out too. And Brother Jeff too.
Brother Jeff, H.So, and all the men out there who are leading by example and who are already actively engaged in changing the narrative. We appreciate you. God bless you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.